Monarch, I mean, come on, guys. What a great episode. Good for you guys. That's what we like to see. That's big. What's up, everybody? D-Man back. Welcome back to a brand new video, and today we're going to be reviewing Monarch Season 1, Episode 4, Parallels and Interiors. Let's do it. I thought this episode was fantastic. I really enjoyed it, and personally, I think that the reason it's so strong is because this show is so clearly at its strongest when it's telling brand new stories, and that's what this episode was. This episode was filled with brand new stories that did not touch upon anything we know from the past. I mean, it touched a little bit upon, like, the events of Godzilla 2014, but for the most part, it was telling its own story, and thank God, because that's where this show excels, and the writing was so strong in this episode. Really strong character episode. I loved it. It was just a really good episode of television. This was a really good episode of TV, and I want to give this episode a lot of credit because I loved it. I actually was surprised to see that I did not mind the fact that we were missing the past plot at all. In fact, it kind of made me think that maybe we don't need it. Sometimes I think it can be justified. Sometimes it's fun to go back to the past and see Bill Randa and those guys, but clearly you don't need to do it, and if they do a season 2, I'd wonder if they cut back on the stuff in the past and push forward more stuff in the future or present. And honestly, that's fine because this episode proved you really don't need the stuff in the past. I thought this was really strong stuff. That being said, there still was a past plotline. It just was a year ago with our same characters of the modern cast rather than jumping way back 50 plus years ago. Honestly, I thought that this episode handled the past plotline the best out of any of them because it was thematically interwoven into the episode and also directly dealt with the plot of the episode. The story of past and present were one and the same, and it's actually so hard to separate the plot lines that, unlike normal in my Monarch videos where I go through one story and then I jump to the next story, I'm gonna do them both simultaneously because they're the same story. It was really well done. Really, really strong writing. So we started out with Monarch going on alert, which was fun to see more Monarch. I like seeing Monarch in a show called Monarch. There's actually surprisingly little Monarch. So I liked seeing Monarch in this episode, and I just gotta say, I can't believe where we're at in life. I cannot believe that in the year 2023, Anaconda was included in a piece of Godzilla media. Anaconda plays in a piece of Godzilla media, and that will forever be part of Godzilla's legacy. What a world we live in. Does Dr. Barnes have any relation to Jackson Barnes of the MonsterVerse so far? Felt like a super strange name to pull, especially because she looks like she could be the sister of Jackson Barnes from Godzilla King of the Monsters, or Jay Jackson Jr.'s character. And I don't think they're going to be the same character, which makes me question, why did we add another Barnes to the MonsterVerse? Like, I don't think they're going to be related at all, so what was the purpose of that? But it felt like a weird thing to do. Like, those two feel like they now should be related because they've got the same name. I feel like if another Serizawa strolled in, like Ren Serizawa, for instance, and then someone was like, oh my god, are you Dr. Serizawa's son? And he's like, Doctor who? No, my dad's a dentist. You'd be like, oh, okay, who is this guy? Felt weird. I'm kind of surprised that Barnes was able to even hear the signal over her music in the first place, but I don't really blame her for jamming out, and it also reminded me a lot of the dudes in Godzilla Final Wars who were also jamming out while waiting for Godzilla, or watching him rather, which I just gotta say, even in Godzilla Final Wars that job sucked, but in the MonsterVerse especially, this is the worst job we have ever seen in Monarch. This sucks. No one wants to hang out in the Utah desert their whole lives doing jack squat. That is so boring. I really liked seeing Barnes' maps on the TV because it had a very similar layout and fields to the Monarch Outpost maps shown in Godzilla King of the Monsters and the MonsterVerse overall, so I liked that bit of continuity. I also was quite interested to see that they consider this little dinky thing Outpost 47. How is this Outpost 47? It's just a trailer in a desert, but I guess maybe this is before Monarch has had their full massive expansion that they have before King of the Monsters. They're in the midst of it right now, so maybe this will be built into a Monarch Outpost and she's just kind of staking the grounds first, but man, that job sucks. Also, based on her vibes and the way she's dismissed by Monarch and put on hold at the start of the episode, I very clearly think Barnes is a good guy, and I think she will show back up in the show and help us out throughout the show. She felt like a pretty strong character to introduce right here and then to like maybe let her fall to the wayside, and she also just made such a strong impression that I think she's clearly a good guy. We then catch back up with a Frost Vark attack, and it is viciously destroying the plane. Oh my gosh. We also see poor Duho's dead body. I mean, shout out Duho for being such an amazing character, and also shout out Bruce Beck for playing him wonderfully. I got the name wrong in the last episode, so shout out Bruce Beck. Also, shout out Bruce Beck for watching my videos and hitting me up about how much he enjoyed them. That was a really nice thing to do, and that was very exciting. I love Duho, and I am so sorry to see him go so quickly because he was such a wonderful addition to the last episode. But I appreciated that his death meant something and that this episode went out of their way to justify the fact that he had to die and that he still gets a heroic sacrifice even still. The Frost Vark design looked so incredible in action in this episode. It looked great, and I loved seeing the way that Kate truly did care about Kentaro's safety and wanted him to get to safety. I also thought the way that Kentaro tried to save them with the flare was a lot of fun. Nice to see flares, a reoccurring theme in the MonsterVerse, come back into this episode. I noticed how Shaw loaded up the flare gun in the last episode and was waiting to see how it was used, and so I appreciated that it was used here in a very funny and very MonsterVerse styled moment, very Cole with the grenades kind of moment. The later reveal that by shooting the flare, Kentaro made them targets of the attack didn't really sit right with me, considering it didn't make sense. The Frost Vark was already trying to attack Kentaro, and if it truly wanted the heat of the flare, why wouldn't it have just followed the flare? Why'd it go after Kentaro? Also, the subtitles on my screener, I just gotta say, they were significantly worse on this episode than they have been on any other episode. Normally they're big subtitles on screen, they're burnt into the episode and they look really nice. For some reason on this episode, they were really small subtitles pushed way down below the screen, like I could barely read them. Apple TV, for the people who received screeners, please fix that. It was actually really hard to follow the dialogue given that they were so tiny and pushed way down there on the screen. What happened to the good burnt in subtitles? Those looked really nice. I'm wondering if that'll be an issue on the actual episode when it airs. I have no idea when it airs how it'll look. The sequence where the gang hides under the cave under the Frost Vark was super intense. It also gave very good Empire Strikes Back vibes, and I really liked the way that Kate was looking after May in this scene, and she really wanted to do her best to save May's life. I also loved the way that May was able to hold on to her scream just long enough for the Frost Vark to leave so that it didn't kill everybody. But that's what this whole episode is kind of about, is May and Kentaro. The two of them are the central characters for this episode, and I feel very conflicted about some of it. I think in this episode, both characters take some L's, some characters more massive than others, while also taking some W's. I think Kentaro is a little rude in the past and a little dismissive of his mother, which I don't like because, damn it, Emiko's the best character in this show. You leave her alone, Kentaro. Quit being angsty. Be nice to your mom. Don't be like Kate, your sister. And I thought he was kind of dismissive of the art gallery in general, and I liked that they gave a reason for that and it made a lot of sense, but it doesn't change the fact that he is such a real one in the modern day. Modern day Kentaro is S tier, and I loved it. Meanwhile, May continues to frustrate the hell out of me. I cannot stand her. The modern day May is so frustrating, and I really hate it. Meanwhile, the past May I found to be very likable, so it was kind of a weird dynamic there. I feel bad for May because she is such a hated character, and I don't really love when there's characters that get a ton of hate and then it just feels like you're dogpiling onto that, but it doesn't change the fact that the character is written so infuriating. It's really frustrating. Please stop writing characters to be that frustrating, because you oftentimes put an actor on blast for no reason. And I do think May is going to get justified over the course of the show, and I think over time we're going to be like, she was right the whole time, but it's just a frustrating thing to sit through at the moment. The way May gets angry at Shaw for literally saving her life really annoyed me, and then she gets pissed at Kentaro and blames him for everything, which also annoyed me and didn't sit right with me because, hey dude, you were the one who dug into the files. You were the one who cracked that code. You could have seen that it was encrypted and gone, oh, this is military encrypted, guys. We shouldn't dig into this. But you didn't. You opened it. You dug through it by yourself while everybody else was gone. You're the one who left the server open. You're the reason they found you guys. You're the one to blame for like half of that stuff. And also, you're the one who chose to stand on the ice. No one made you stand on the ice. You did that. You did that. I did not like the way she was so rude to Kentaro. I thought it was so weirdly misplaced, which maybe that's the point. She's taking her anger out on Kentaro. She's deflecting, and that's a real thing that people do. It's a frustrating thing that people do, and so it's okay to be frustrated about the fact that she's doing it. I liked the way that we took our time to get into the love plot between the two because it did a great job establishing both characters beforehand rather than making them props in a love story. Unlike our strange introduction to Kate, where she starts out super unsympathetic and then we learn to care for her over the episodes, as she is great now. She's one of my faves, but she started in the bottom of my list. We start with Kentaro at his absolute best in this show, and then we are slowly introduced to more of his flaws, which is the right way to introduce a character. Meanwhile, May, on the other hand, was introduced as a real character first. Although I don't love the character, I liked that she was introduced as a real character first and a love interest second, because that's the right way to introduce that type of character as well. You don't just want her to be a prop in a love story. You want her to be a real person. Kentaro's art was awesome, by the way. I was super impressed to see it, and if that was real, that would be incredible stuff. Also, the Frost Vark is a Titan? How? Literally, how? That does not make sense. What does the term Titan mean within the MonsterVerse? Clearly it means nothing, because nobody in the MonsterVerse knows what the rules of the MonsterVerse are. The writers of this show don't know. The writers of the Skull Island anime don't know. The writers of the movies don't know. I feel like that term Titan was introduced and it was a blanket term for the big kaiju, and then is retroactively being applied to places where it doesn't actually make sense, because we're told like some of those Skull Island critters are not titans, like them other long legs ain't a titan, but the Frost Vark is. Why? What on earth makes a titan? It is so frustratingly needlessly complicated. They just need to come up with a rule for it. Come up with a rule for it, because as we understood it as fans, the rule was basically based on your status in the food chain, based on how large of a threat you were to the world at hand. And now we're kind of being told, actually, you could be a titan even if you're like 20 feet tall and you pose no threat to anybody but humans, and now you're a titan. What on earth does that term mean? I would think that this guy would be a super species, personally. That's what I would call him, but I don't think they like to use that term anymore because I don't think they remember it. May throwing her files at Shaw and then getting mad at Shaw for holding them was so stupid, and it was so forced. I really disliked the way that they did that. It was a weird way to cast doubt upon the character of Shaw, and even still, I actually think he is going to be revealed to be holding ulterior motives, and I don't think he's going to be the greatest guy as we are led on to believe. I still don't think he's going to be a bad guy, because we spend so much time with Shaw in the past where he's such an upstanding dude, it just wouldn't make a ton of sense to me for him to be a bad guy. I just simply think his goals won't align with our characters. I think he's going to have a bit more of a harsh relationship with Hiroshi than we're expecting, and I don't think he's going to necessarily be looking out for the same things that our characters are looking out for. But it was a weird way to cast doubt on the character, and I felt it was a very forced moment. She threw the files at him and then got pissed at him for holding them. It was so dumb. Also, Kentaro, dude, you saw a light. You didn't see a golf ball shaped structure. What are you talking about? You saw a light flash. That was a weird thing for him to say, and he was right about it too. Whoa. I loved the transition between the past and the present in this episode. I loved the lighting, directing, and cinematography, and just the vibe of all the scenes set in the past. So big shout out to director Julian Holmes and his team. Great stuff here, guys. I also really liked the art direction in this episode. It was awesome. Given how much art plays into the themes of the episode and played into the plot, I loved the use of interior decorating, costume design. I really liked the contrast between Kentaro's smaller bubble apartment with May's much larger, grimier apartment. That was a great contrast. He's got less space, but his is cleaner. She's got more space, but hers is dirtier. It also kind of plays into the vibes of these characters. The porthole window on Kentaro's apartment kind of made him feel trapped in this tiny little apartment. He's being locked in and looked in upon. He feels judged. I really liked it. Also, undeniably, Kentaro's art in that exhibit was way better than his art in the room. May, you didn't even see his art in the exhibit, but why she's like, why is this not in the exhibit? Because it's not as good as those incredible faces he made. That's why. I felt like the way the gang split up was a little forced. Like, I actually felt as though Kentaro would have probably just assumed the glowing light he saw was the blue light that he also sees right there. And also, it's like a visible, tangible thing that he's spotted now, so I don't get why he wouldn't be like, oh, that must be what I saw from the plane. But I guess he was committed to knowing that there was a golf ball shaped structure out there, and he was turned out to be right, so I guess good for him. Again, I really liked that Shaw allowed everybody to call their own shots, make their own choices, didn't force any plans upon anybody that didn't agree to it. Even though I think May will be vindicated at some point by revealing Shaw isn't who we think he is, I think she's stupidly judgmental of him at the moment because he has been consistently demonstrated to be a pretty upstanding guy. We now identify that the Monarch main center we saw in the first episode is actually in Arlington, Virginia. I don't know if any Titans are located there, but it's in Arlington, Virginia, where we see Monarch continuing to brand all their stuff with their freaking logo because those guys love to give themselves away, including their coffee cups, which is actually exactly what they do in Godzilla King of the Monsters. So that was a nice little touch. Here we see a much less sinister side of Verdugo. I actually thought she was kind of likable in this episode, as she learns that there has been a large spike in radiation which signals a new emergence happening. And I don't think that the Frost Vark is what triggered the emergence. Personally, I think they're two separate events that happen at the same area, because I think what is most likely happening here is a Hollow Earth portal is flaring up near the Frost Vark, maybe as a result of some sort of Titan's movements within. Maybe the Ion Dragon is lurking within the Hollow Earth right now and has moved to that portal in Alaska. That very well could be what happened. I just don't think that the Frost Vark was big enough to create that hole. Apparently the same thing happened right before G-Day at Janjira and Yucca Flat, where the Mutos both awakened from. Although we've never heard that before, it's fine. We didn't see those big beams of light happen, but I guess we're being told that gamma bursts occurred that coincided with the awakening of the Mutos back then, and that a new signal implies that a new Titan is on the loose. Kentaro's creepy dream hallucinations were fantastic in this episode. It was a great way to build the mood of the episode, and it made this episode feel very horrific at times. I loved it. I have no idea what Shaw was talking about. Titans have odd effects on their surroundings and how we experience them. The cloud we flew through, this place, it's stranger than you think. It's stranger than anybody knows. What on earth does that mean? Does that mean that Titans cause people's minds to warp or something? What does that mean? How did they do a big circle like Blair Witch to wind up back where they started? We have literally never seen that in the MonsterVerse before, but I'm so curious to see what on earth he is talking about, because that is a very interesting development for the MonsterVerse. Shout out Kate for wanting to save lives so badly. I thought she was really cool in this episode, the way she stood up to Shaw and wanted to defend May. I thought that was good character stuff. What is up with the vibe in that blue light sequence? I loved Kentaro's lighting invention. I thought it was super cool. Not as cool as they kind of acted like it was, but it was super cool. I'd buy one. But why were the characters so weirdly dazed in this scene? Like, they're so slow and kind of drugged in the way they talk. Was the sex that good, you guys? Is that where you were mentally afterward? Because that was kind of wild. There was such a weird vibe, but it was so peaceful. It was very calming and hypnotic. It was really strange. I loved the scene. I just didn't understand why that was their vibe. Speaking of vibes, Leopold Ross's music in this episode was absolutely on another level. It was truly amazing stuff. So synthy and strange and hypnotic and scary at times. This was the best soundtrack we have heard in the show so far. Reminded me of John Carpenter music, reminded me of 80s horror. It was really, really strong. We also teased in this episode that May has a sister named Lyra, and it seems that that's who she's been talking to on the phone, and they have some sort of weird relationship with these super distant secrets that are very clearly hiding something pretty large. I don't know what that's all about. I'm very, very curious to see where that leads. The transition to the Northern Lights was amazing. I just loved seeing them. I love seeing them in movies in general. They're so beautiful, and I cannot get enough of them on screen. Seeing them here clearly brings back Kong Skull Island vibes. I don't think that was unintentional. It brings back those vibes and adds this mythical quality to the Titans, and also kind of plays into the way that they kind of have these magnetic, weird relationships with nature. I liked it. Again, Shaw is such a damn real one for this episode. The way that he scavenges for everybody, the way that he's looking out for everybody. I get why Kate wants to burn the Monarch files, for instance, but I also get why Shaw wants to save them, and I think it was super important of him to just let her make the call. There is clearly something so important going on here that Kate and May are both choosing to be ignorant about, and it kind of frustrates me that neither of them want to dig in deeper about this stuff. Also, I thought it was a little strange how Shaw didn't read over the papers one time before burning them, but to each their own. But it's like, yeah, May, no shit Shaw wants to dig into these files. It has important data in regards to the existence of giant monsters that threaten the whole planet. No shit he wants to dig into those files, and clearly wants to know what's on them. And again, shout out to Shaw for letting them burn the papers, letting Kate make the call. It's really nice to see him just allowing them to be themselves and choose their own destiny. The attack sequence with the Frost Vark was absolutely peak. It was so good. I loved the way it eats the fire. I loved the way it turns it into blue radiation. It was amazing stuff, great visuals, and it was really exciting. What was weird was how Serizawa isn't involved in the briefing about the gamma radiation. If Assistant Director Verdugo, who you'd think would be the person working directly under Serizawa, seems to know about this and is trying to alert everybody about it, you'd think it'd be a big enough deal to loop in at least some of the characters from King of the Monsters. This would have been a perfect time to work in some cameos from King of the Monsters, maybe a Dr. Chen, maybe a Rick Stanton, maybe a Vivian Graham, maybe a Serizawa. This would have been the perfect place to put them on the TV screens. It would have been an easy cameo to film. It could have just been such a background thing too, and I think it was weird that they weren't involved. Feels very disconnected from the MonsterVerse so far. I liked seeing Tim take charge here in this scene, but I'm a little confused about what his point was. Like, were they not already looking into the radiation? Is that not already what was happening? Or was it simply that he wants to study whatever it is that is happening there while Monarch wanted to blow it up? Is that kind of what it was implying? The Monarch just wanted to kill whatever it is and he wants to look into it first? I don't know. I loved the reveal that the Frost Vark is attracted to heat and that's how it has been tracking them. That was great stuff. I'm a little confused on what the plan was here. Was Shaw trying to feed the Frost Vark, or did he think the fire would kill it? Because we've already seen it eating the fire, so why would he suddenly think it would blow it up? That scene with Kentaro and Hiroshi was so Polar Express. It was a little goofy, but I liked the way that the pencil travings eventually led to this whole creepy scene. I thought the scene overall had this weird vibe, and the vibe was strong enough to justify the strangeness of the scene. I also loved seeing that Kentaro was right about what I think is an old Monarch outpost, but wound up seeing it through the lens of a hallucination first. The way it kind of faded through the hallucination to reality was great, and again, big shout out to the music, because it was fantastic. The whole scene with Kentaro and Hiroshi in the art exhibit was absolutely fantastic. I loved the way that it kept flickering between the real exhibit and the outpost Kentaro was in. The emotional stakes were so high. I loved seeing Kentaro's pain brought to the surface, and I loved the reveal here that he is mad, but he's not mad at Hiroshi, but rather himself for missing his last opportunity to see his father, all because he was too ashamed to face him. That scene was so great. I actually thought the reveal was going to be a little different. I thought the reveal was going to be that the day of Kentaro's exhibit was the same day that San Francisco or G-Day happened, which I'm glad they didn't do, because it would have made me question, like, why wouldn't Hawaii be the first big event? Like, if he got the word during his exhibit that San Francisco was under attack and then he thinks his father dies, that would have been an impactful moment. But yeah, I would have been like, well, what about Hawaii? Hawaii would have been the thing. That I think when Hawaii happened, probably the rest of the world kind of went into chaos, and I don't think they were holding art exhibits while the Mutos were rampaging around. So I'm glad that they kind of did it the way they did it, where it was his last opportunity to see his father, and he totally missed it. It was also just a great scene and another good way to underscore the fact that Hiroshi truly does love both of his families, even though he was so dishonest to them. Fake snow, it always looks silly. I always gotta point it out. It looked weird, but the rest of the episode was pretty solid with how cold it felt and how realistic the snow felt. The reveal that Kentaro is on Hiroshi's trail and discovers the radio that Hiroshi used to call for help was great. I loved that stuff. And if not Monarch, I really wonder who Hiroshi called to save him. Very curious to see where that leads. But why was Hiroshi sharpening his pencil right there? Is that just something he does when he's nervous? Or like, what was the point of him sharpening it at that facility at that spot? Just so he could be found? I don't know. It was a little strange. Unless he is literally trying to leave breadcrumbs for his kids to follow him, which would be a very interesting reveal. I love how Shaw still cares so much for Duho and is telling fun stories about him even after he's dead. I also liked that the story felt a little Big Trouble. I liked that it was basically just that Duho was cheating his shots and not taking them just so he could get Shaw drunk. I also loved how Shaw was willing to sacrifice himself to save the girls. It was just a great moment. And the way the helicopters were revealed within the deep background well before making their appearance known was so fantastic. That was fantastic filmmaking. It was great. I saw the red dot blinking and actually thought it might have been a mistake in the episode before it was revealed to be the helicopter. That was great. May, look, I get it. I get that May needed to save herself from the Frost Vark, but god damn it, I agree with Shaw here. Can't you understand how valuable the data on those disks in that computer is? Like, do you not get it? The way she just throws that thing under the bus and potentially risks the entire planet? May, come on. The Frost Vark attack on Shaw was great. It was so very The Thing, clearly is what inspired it. It was a lot of fun, and it led to this really exciting chase to get back on the helicopter, and Kentaro being revealed to be the one who saved them was a great way to justify everybody, because either way, they all needed to go the ways they did in order for things to work out and everybody to survive. Had Kate and May not gone back towards the light, they would have never gotten May the safety and shelter she needed at the fire, and had Kentaro not split off, he would have never been able to rescue them. Also, I am fully convinced that was a Hollow Earth portal, and I'm very curious to see what opened it. I really am excited. Kentaro did not abandon anybody. He was the one who knew what he was talking about, and you guys just didn't believe him. I like how they hold off on the reveal that the gang has been taken by Monarch, even though it was hinted at, but I like how they hold off on the reveal until the final bits of the episode. I am a little confused, though, why Shaw didn't ask who was the ones who picked him up. I feel like Shaw would have deduced that Monarch got him well before we see Monarch is the one who got them. But I liked the scene because it gave a great way to show the bond between Kate and May forming and the bond between Kate and Kentaro forming. That was really nice. I cannot wait to see what it is that Tim wants from Shaw. I'm really excited to see more of Tim in this show and see him more directly involved. That's going to be fun stuff. And I'm excited to see those guys interact because I think the two of them are going to form a valuable team that will save the planet. Overall, I want to give a huge shout out to this episode. I thought it was really strong. Still not as good as episode 2 for me, but I thought this was a great episode. Great vibes, great horror, great backstory, great character development, great monster attacks, great special effects, great. Everything was great. I really liked this episode. I thought it was good stuff. I was very into it. Some questionable character decisions, and I just can't get over how annoying May is. But other than that, it was a really strong episode. What did you guys think of episode 4? Comment below and let me know. Where does this rank among other episodes? I know there's no Godzilla and a little less monsters than normal, so comment below and let me know. I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Until I see you guys for the next one, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. If you want to check out the Patreon, you can using the link in the description below, where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you guys next time for the next one. D-Man out.